Hello, I'm Gill Fielding, and this is what's caught my eye in the media this week. Well, first of all, I have to say that the vast majority of the media coverage this week has been about the Ukrainian situation. And although politics isn't my area of expertise, I'm praying for a peaceful outcome to the situation there. In my area of expertise, I read a lovely story about a couple that were eating out at their local fish restaurant. This is in America, and apparently this couple had eaten there for 35 years, and they had clams on this particular occasion, and the man bit into the clam and bit on something hard, and it turned out to be a round and perfectly white 8.8mm pearl, which could be worth $10,000 or more, or whatever it might be. And what a fantastic evening out that must have been. And it reminded me that good fortune is all around us, and you never know when good fortune and good luck and good experience are going to come our way. So let's be optimistic and expect something lovely to happen rather than misery all the time. Now, one thing that did make me a bit miserable was an announcement from the Bank of England that they are now starting a consultative process to see whether they should remove the affordability criteria for mortgages. Now, I call this the affordability hokey cokey. We've only had affordability criteria since 2014. And this is where, when you apply for a residential mortgage, you have to tell everybody where you go on holiday and where you get your hair cut and everything, so that they can see whether you can afford the mortgage. Well, it turns out that only 6% of people have changed their mortgage criteria as a result of the affordability testing. And so it isn't actually doing what the Bank of England initially thought it would do. And so they've started a consultative process to see whether we should chuck it out. And I just wish they'd make up their mind, frankly. So it's out, it's in, and it now might be out again. So watch this space. Now, official confirmation this week that London does actually lead the field. London has beaten New York, Paris and Hong Kong to be labelled the wealth capital of the world. And that's a list of 100 cities compiled by the Wealth Report, and they canvass wealthy people. And it turns out that there are 25,771 people in the UK worth over $30 billion. And a third of them live in London. What interests me actually as an individual, obviously I'm not in their league, but what interests me is that where they invest and what they do. And 31% of them, so a third of them, invest in property, while only 11% invest in things like cryptocurrency. So apparently $3 billion was invested in UK property last year. Now, I suppose those figures may have changed dramatically over the last couple of weeks due to the Ukrainian situation, but the rich, wealthy and informed people around the world still consider to be London the world's financial centre, and property is still their #1 asset of choice, and we can copy that. Now, I was very lucky in some senses to have been born in London, so I'm very London-centric myself, but that was nothing to do with me, that was my parents. But I do have the choice to invest in property, just like they do, and to copy their behaviours such that I can be on that wealth trail as well. And you never know, I might make it into the Wealth Report at some stage in the future. Now, the next thing is about the rental rat race. Now, I know there's lots of news and commentary about purchasing property and how difficult it is to get onto the property ladder, but let's just spare a thought for the renters out there as well. According to a report in the Times summarising some Zoopla research, rents in the last 5 years, there are 39% fewer properties available to rent than the 5-year average, and rents are at a 13-year high. So there's less availability, and obviously as a consequence the rent goes up. The average rent in the UK is now £969, which is up £62 per month since the start of the pandemic. And overall rents are up 12% over the last 5 years. But there are specific areas where rents are galloping far ahead of that. And I read a heartbreaking story about a person who was renting in London, in the East End of London, actually. Their landlord just demanded an extra £700 a month rent. And of course, I'm torn when I read stories like this. First of all, as a human being, I'm disappointed and saddened for the poor renters that have to deal with these challenges of no availability and rising rents. But there is a part of me as a property investor that is quite pleased with rising rents, because obviously that's better profit for me and better cash flow. But those two opinions don't have to be mutually exclusive. And if only the government would work with private landlords such that we can provide the necessary suitable accommodation at a sensible price and increase the supply and availability of rental properties across the UK, then renters, tenants would be better off. We'd still get a decent profit, and everybody would win. I just wish the government would work with us to provide a necessary service to this country, rather than constantly attacking us with different pieces of regulations and legislation, and attacking us with the might of the HMRC. Let's all work together and make a better outcome, and will increase supply and increase availability for tenants. Well, that's it for this week. Keep safe. I'll see you next week.